Hi there, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, failing smarter is my topic. And to begin with, what is failure actually? According to the Oxford Dictionary, it's lack of success, the neglect or omission of expected or required action, or the action or state of not functioning. And when you're doing stuff outside of your ordinary comfort zone, you're very likely to encounter failure in all sorts of shapes and forms. So, my name is Tor, and as I mentioned, I'm very, very glad to be here today. And I think I have some credibility in this topic because I've been doing projects, entrepreneurial stuff for the last about 10 years or so. I started in communication, then I decided to make denim pants in the Far East, and after that I moved into making Loopcam, which is today one of the biggest video animation apps in the world. And during this journey, I've learned that willingness to fail gives the ability to succeed, and also that daring to meet failure is really key to getting anywhere, and to respect failure, but also not to be afraid of it. And the journey of Loopcam started 2011. I had this dream of investigating the areas in between photography and video. You know, we had this very defined idea of what a photo is and very defined idea of what a video is. And we asked ourselves, like, what is in between there? And maybe it was something like a flipbook. So I called a friend and sat down and built a prototype. And we really built that over a weekend or 2 or 3 or something like that. And we shipped it, and it turned out really, really well. It was suddenly used by people all over the world, like literally the next morning, people in the US and in Japan and in France and in Sweden were using it. And it was used by people from all walks of lives, basically. It was used by kids, by old people, and also by pets to some extent. So that was fantastic. I mean, it's sort of the dream app saga. You just have this super nice idea and you build something and then it takes off from nowhere. But the fail sort of happened really the day after launch, because that was when we found out that the winds of interest, the winds of excitement blew away as fast as they came to us. And then we wondered, like, how should we do this? Is it about to just leave it and go away and let it fade away as just another hobby project? Or should we think about it and maybe do something big? I wanted to do something big. So moving on and moving towards really exploring what is the future of visual communication. It was time for doing Loopcam for real. So this is a 3-chapter story about what we learned from this journey and maybe what you can learn from this kind of scenarios too. So chapter 1, the platform game. Now I'd moved to Berlin because Berlin is supposedly the Silicon Valley of Europe. And I was sitting at this super glossy office in Mitte, the central part of the city. And I was meeting with a guy who's supposedly the most influential tech investor in the city and in the entire Europe. And just as I started pitching Loopcam for the first time, I'd been preparing for this for several months, I got interrupted by the guy. And in a very charming Swiss accent, he said, "Hey Tor, you should think about how my career began. It began like this. I imported Japanese toilets from Japan to Europe in the 80s. Okay, well, what's going on here? It was a horrible pitch because you had to try this Japanese toilet 4 times before you would like it. So as a salesman, he had a pretty tough job. And I really just thought about this situation as I sat there, that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, just doing project that takes me out in like this kind of weird borderlands of everything, and sitting with a tech investor and talking about Japanese toilets, because that just doesn't happen if you sit at your 9-to-5 job every day. And indeed, the Loopcam pitch had some parallels to the Japanese toilet pitch as well, because it didn't work out. It didn't work out the first time. He told me that it wasn't enough. It was just too weird, or I don't know, too many pets, or I don't know what's wrong. But I had to go home and do it better. So instead of being let down, I decided to think about it and sort of have a philosophy on how to cope with deeping into a new world, because I had never been in touch with tech people before, or even doing software development or anything like that. And I decided to see it all as a game, a platform game. Because if you see it as a game, then it doesn't, everything isn't that deadly serious, and you dare to do stuff that you wouldn't dare to do otherwise. And you see this guy you're trying to convince rather as a boss in the game, or a level to achieve, or achievement to unlock, or whatever, rather than the real reality. And that's pretty useful when you have to learn a new vocabulary, you have to learn to meet thousands of people and to pitch for like hundreds of people, and just to all the time revise what you think is upside down and downside up, and you don't know anything. So it took a few months of leveling for me, and fortunately I think I had some extra lives as well in this game, because I managed to live after all these months. And this guy decided to join the project soon thereafter. That was awesome. So, chapter 2. Now we had the money, we had this small investment from him, and we knew that it was now when the hard part started. We had to really build something. We had to build a product that was appealing to millions of people. We had to take it from a niche product towards a huge product that was used by everyone. And that's not easy at all. So we began with talking to our audience, to our users. And a common feedback that we got from them was that we had a small group of very creative people that made all sorts of fantastic short movies and just pushed the boundaries all the time. And then we had another group of people that was the vast majority, and they weren't that creative, and they were sort of afraid of us just giving them a blank slate, a blank canvas, and hoping for them to make something great out of that. So we had an idea. We had an idea of making a framework, a creative framework, and that creative framework, even it sounds very complicated and dry, looked like this. It was called A Bunch of Santas. We gave all our users a free Santa mask, and it was used by hundreds of people every day, and people just used this Santa mask for everything, for cars or for food or for themselves or whatever. And it was fantastic to see. And finally people had something to relate to. They could like see this and try to fit something into this mask. We even repeated this success with the Chinese New Year, and we found out that we had a huge audience in the Far East as well. Registered loopcam.cn and said to some newspapers that we were launching in China. So it's fun to troll the world sometimes as well. But the big problem was that people just came and they left as soon as they came. Actually, it was just a very short peak. And we had to find out a more sustainable way to gaining users and have them on board. So there's a method in this sort of startup culture that's called build, measure, learn. And it's about having an idea of what you want to achieve. In this case, we wanted to achieve long-term sustainable growth. And then set up some clear metrics, some numbers that you want to reach to see whether that experiment is successful or not. And then build a small experiment and ship it as soon as possible. And then see how your audience reacts to that. And we did that, and after getting the feedback, we learned that people wanted to have a more sort of season-independent help to create stuff. So we launched a bunch of filters and stickers that were platform or season independent, and it turned out to be one of our most important growth factors. So, chapter 3, small is great. And now we had been working with Loopcam for about 2 years, and we weren't just one guy sitting in his kitchen in his underwear. That's me. We were a full team, had a real office, a coffee machine. We're 5 people. We worked at office hours. We're actually making a lot of progress. And I think we were also pretty influential because a big company in the US called Twitter, one of the biggest social networks in the world, they decided to launch their own version of Loopcam that was pretty inspired of ours. It had the same kind of color, it had the same kind of functionality as well. And instead of getting panic out of the situation, we felt that, okay, we're 5 people against 50 or hundreds of people, and they also had this like user base of hundreds of millions of people that they were pushing their product to, and they had this base of celebrities using their app as well. So we couldn't really fight against them on the same terms. And I mean, of course, it's part of the game. That's how it works. Sometimes you get copied, and sometimes you're the one that copies others. But we felt that we were about to make a big move. So instead of trying to become a generic video app with some fun twists, we launched something that's really special, and that is the best selfie maker in the world. And that's out since a few weeks and looks like this. So you can really make the weirdest selfies in town and share them to Instagram or whatever. And future will tell whether that was a good strategic choice or not. And I mean, being small is great because you can really turn, make fast turns pretty easy, and it's also, I mean, you have the freedom to fail, and most people won't notice until you make it really big. And we had to tell ourselves that several times over and over again when working with this, that we had the possibility to actually compete with the big ones on special terms. And in the end of the day, it's also, of course, easier to turn a raft around than a big oil tanker. So let's get back to the definition again. What is failure? I'd like to add something to this definition here, and that is that failure, when managed well, is your best friend towards success and a great tool for learning. And don't forget that when you're working on that new project that you want to make happen. Thank you very much.